Hello, sunshine. I'm Alexi Lalas, and welcome to the State of the Union podcast, where we look at the beautiful game on and off the field through the lens of red, white, and blue-colored glasses. This is a special live show following the, well, it has to be said, the 0-4 embarrassment of a loss from the U.S. men's national team against Switzerland, which just concluded a couple minutes ago. But first, joining me as always, my friend, my colleague, my guiding light, David Mosse, a soccer savant and a Fox soccer researcher and writer extraordinaire. Mosse, greetings, good evening. I am on one side of the country, you are on the other side of the country, but there's nothing lost in translation or time zone after what we just witnessed. We are not going to go through every single player. We will mention a little bit, but I think we want to kind of keep it big picture relative to this game, but also big picture in terms of what this means and where we're going. For those that don't know, and you should know, we are basically a year away from the World Cup, and we have just lost 4 games in a row. Quick thoughts, Mosse.
You're in New York, I am in LA, and I feel very sorry for people who were in Nashville tonight because, as you said, the first half in particular was the most embarrassing 45 minutes in a very long time for the U.S. national team. It's the sort of game that I thought this country was past. Switzerland didn't even get out of second gear, and they absolutely toyed with the U.S. So obviously not the way that you want to go into a Gold Cup this summer.
Yeah, so major changes from Pochettino in terms of this lineup, but it didn't change much in terms of the, obviously, the opportunities that were afforded the other team and oftentimes gifted the other team. There still is concerns when it comes to Matt Turner. On some of the goals, I don't think he could have done anything on, but certainly on one, he had to do better. And when you're under a microscope like he is for not playing, everything is going to be magnified, especially when you let up a huge rebound like that. Now, look, there was plenty of crap to be shared and to go around. While I think you have to look at these players, and I think, Kyle Martino, who was working the game, I think on a continual basis was referencing, especially in the first half, it got a little better in the second half, but it's a little misleading in the second half because you're already up for nothing. But certainly in the first half, again, the lack of energy, the lack of commitment, and in particular, because it's easy just to say, spirit, energy, commitment. I think the lack of the ability to press as a team and to be capable of doing it. And this is where I get into Mauricio Pochettino. I don't think that he should be absolved by any stretch of the imagination with what is going on here. And if he just wants to, kick the can down the road and say, hey, listen, everybody shut up shop and we'll meet you back here in June of 2026. Okay, I don't agree with that, but if that's what is going to happen, then I think that we got even bigger problems here. A team that does not look like they know what they want to do, either because, like I said, they don't know what they want to do, or a team that can't do it. And I do think that, to be fair, even though this is a criticism, these players, from a pure soccer perspective, individually and collectively, this group was not up to it. And this is not an elite team they were playing against, but a team that will tear you apart. And like you said, Mosse, they barely broke a sweat. I'm talking about Switzerland.
Yeah, that front three of Ndoye, Mbolo, and Manzambi ate alive the U.S. backline, particularly the fullbacks in the first half. Harriel and Arston were a disaster defensively. Yeah, there were 9 changes to the starting line relative to the Turkey game. The only 2 who stayed were Johnny and Arston. And the reason Johnny stayed is because Tyler Adams evidently has picked up an injury now, and he's a doubt for the Gold Cup, and that would be a disaster. We've talked so much about the missing players. He's one of the few starters that actually bothered to show up this summer and seemed motivated and wanted to play in this Gold Cup. So, yeah, it would be a terrible blow, obviously, if he's out.
Mosse, ultimately for someone like Pochettino, if he were to coach all the way through next summer, I still, even with this, I don't see the federation making a change. For someone like him, all that matters is the World Cup. But pushing all of those chips into next summer, and not only doing that, but then on the other side, when we are seeing these games, I mean, there have to be panic buttons being pushed behind the scenes, and certainly out there in American soccer land. And I know we wear our heart on our sleeve, and we can get incredibly emotional about this. That's something that's a good thing. We shouldn't apologize for that. And when you see a performance like this, again, with a team lacking any sense of how they want to play, how they want to press, and then you compound it with any sense of, physical intimidation out there. I'm just grasping for straws here. So when Diego Luna comes in the second half, and he's doing some interesting things. When Token comes in and does some interesting things out there, but I mean, it is the bottom of the barrel to make something positive come out of not just this game, but these two games. Now we're going into the Gold Cup, and while I've talked about how they can use this Gold Cup to maybe reignite some of the excitement around this team. Now the problem is people are going to reference back to these two games. Yeah, but it's just the Gold Cup. Yeah, it's just CONCACAF. Yeah, you're just playing against mediocre teams and teams that you are better at, and that's not where we want to be. And when it really came down to it, in those two games against quality opponents, Turkey and Switzerland, you know what the bet.
Yeah, listen, I love Diego Luna. I thought some of the tough guy stuff in the second half rang a little hollow when you're down 4-0. But yeah, if you're trying to find some positive tonight, it's the energy that he brought in the second half relative to all the other players. On Pochettino, he has been an abject disappointment so far. 5 defeats in 10 games. He's really added nothing, let's be honest. And, the Matt Doyle types are having a field day on X saying, I thought Berhalter was the problem and bringing in a big name foreigner was going to fix everything. And Matt Doyle gets to say that right now, and it's incumbent on Pochettino over the next 12 months to shut up the Matt Doyles of the world and prove that actually bringing somebody in like him did make sense, and he is capable of elevating the situation. He hasn't done that so far. And listen, I still think the Gold Cup matters, and if somebody does well at the Gold Cup, particularly in the later stages when you presumably will face a Mexico or a Canada, that does carry some weight with me if you're spitting it forward until 26. But I do think Turkey and Switzerland are the two best teams the U.S. will face this summer. So again, I go back to the missing players. It's really disappointing that the U.S. wasn't able to field stronger lineups against these two teams. How often do they get to face European opposition of this caliber? And for these games to go the way they did, it already makes this summer disappointing in some respects for me.
Mosse, many people have listened to you over the years on the State of the Union, and your Brazilian background. Had Brazil, or if Brazil was in a situation like this with the World Cup a year away and all of this attention and momentum, would they be thinking make a change in terms of the manager right now?
It would at least be a conversation, yeah. Brazil has already changed managers multiple times in this cycle.
Well, what would you do, Mosse? What would you do right now if I made you the king of U.S. soccer right now, and you're faced with this moment where you're losing attention, and whatever attention you're getting is incredibly negative in a moment where you already made a big change, and as you said, it was designed to head it in the right direction, and it's going in the absolute opposite direction. What would you do if you were the head of U.S. soccer?
I think you probably have to live and die with Pochettino here, to be honest. I don't know. After bringing him in and so little time, I think to make another change, you would kind of end up looking ridiculous. So you just have to somehow convince yourself that things are going to turn around here. But yeah, no, like I say, it's been a disappointment so far. And again, this stereotyping that Pochettino, because he's Argentine, was going to bring this dark arts and toughness element to the team, that's just misunderstanding his career and stereotyping him as a manager. Most of his career as a player and coach has been in Europe. He came up as a player with Newell's Old Boys and played for Marcelo Bielsa in the early 90s, but that's about it. He then picked up and moved to Europe as a player, spent the rest of his career there, and then his entire coaching career has been in Europe. So I've never thought of Pochettino as this Diego Simeone-esque figure. That aspect of it is not all that surprising to me. I didn't think that overnight he was going to turn the U.S. into this gritty, tough, hard-nosed, dark arts kind of team, and we're certainly not seeing that.
So what do you think when he got in front of the decision makers at U.S. Soccer? What, other than his success and his cachet and his sexiness, because of being at high-profile clubs. Is that what turned their head? I mean, at some point, you have to kind of sit down and well, I guess talk the talk in this situation. What do you think made them starry-eyed?
Ironically, I do think it's the fact that he coached all these star players at different clubs, and so he would command such respect that U.S. players would run to play for him.
Right.
And this summer has given a lie to that too. So yeah, I mean, it turned into a very awkward situation for sure.
Yeah, I'm here in New York, and we're going to be doing a bunch of promotion this week, obviously, with a year out from the World Cup, and we know we are going to get the question after we've talked about the big party that's coming and everything that we're doing at Fox. We're going to get the question about this team, and I want to try to be glass half full, but I mean at this point we're a glass a quarter full, and we're we're in some very, very strange territory here that I never thought we would be in. Now, we have been in difficult moments, and we have been in moments where we are debating as to whatever that quality is when it comes to this team. But I think we're into territory here right now where people are really worried about this team embarrassing themselves and then obviously embarrassing us as a nation at a home World Cup. Now, I forever am trying to find a positive way to look at it, maybe to spin it. As I said, this Gold Cup now takes on a different type of feel because there is this kind of built-in excuse, having not done well in these two games, albeit friendlies. But it also means that come next summer, regardless, I think, of what happens at the Gold Cup, and even if there's incremental belief and confidence that comes over the next, I think they said 8 games before that window opens up, I think we are going to be faced with a real underdog, little engine that could type of personality when it comes to this team. Now, some people like that, and certainly if you look at the U.S. men's national team historically, they have embraced that and done very, very well at that. But it's never been, I think, where the U.S. didn't support them. And I'm not saying people aren't going to support them, but it's never been where the U.S. didn't believe that they could do something magical. And I think that's what they are at risk at losing right now, is anybody even believing that they can conjure up something beautiful, that they can conjure up some sort of miracle out there. And that's again, I never thought that we would be in this position.
Yeah, I mean, coming off the last World Cup where the U.S. got to the round of 16 with the second youngest squad in the tournament, I thought this was going to be a World Cup where the U.S. was going to have to fight sky high and maybe even unrealistic expectations because all the players were going to be in their primes on home soil. And instead, it's gone the other way, where maybe there's a positive there where they'll come in disrespected with a chip on their shoulder, overlooked. And, it is a 48-team World Cup. The U.S. will be a seeded team. So maybe that'll translate into an easier group and they can generate some momentum in the opening round. And then once you get into the knockout stages, who knows? But it's just not the place. Things can still work out and the story could have a happy ending, but it's just not the place any of us thought we were going to be a year out. And it's not the place you want to be with so much negativity surrounding the team.
Yeah. And even the negativity, Mosse, look, I've been around for a long time and I've done this, and, people have seen me wear my emotions on my sleeve at different times and, just to scream and yell. And, at times it can be incredibly cathartic. And I know at times some people, I'm almost a conduit for some of that anger and angst and disappointment out there. I'm having a hard time even conjuring that. And that makes me, I guess the only word I can come up with is a little sad, because at the very least in the past, when I was angry about what was going on, I felt compelled to express it. And now they're not even worth that. They're not even worth me expressing how disappointing this is right now. And so I don't know. They say sometimes you have to hit rock bottom in order to get back up. And I don't know, maybe there is an even bigger rock bottom coming here in the Gold Cup. But if they show us something in the Gold Cup and at least start to steer this ship, it's not a ship, let's be honest, it's more of a dinghy at this time, which may be easier to steer. But if they start to steer it in a more positive direction, maybe with time I can get there and others can get there. And maybe with time, when I am in that moment of despair and disappointment, they will actually return to a place where they are worthy of me venting and screaming and yelling about it. But I just don't have the energy to do that. They don't deserve my energy to do that.
I said on the pod we taped after the Turkey game that I wanted to pivot away from talking about the missing players, but I'm going to go down that path again because this past weekend we covered the UEFA Nations League final, Portugal-Spain, incredible match, 2-2. It goes to penalties. Portugal prevails. You see the emotion on the Portuguese players, Ronaldo, Bruno Fernandes, etc. You were in the studio with Landon Donovan, and Landon went there in the post game. He brought up the juxtaposition between the Portugal players reacting the way they did and having so much pride in representing their country, and the U.S. players missing out on the Gold Cup. He went on a pretty big rant about it, and he didn't name Pulisic, but everybody knew who he was referring to. Pulisic's father comes out and claps back and brings up Landon's sabbatical. He's a hypocrite. Weston McKennie chimed in as well, criticizing the media. So what say you?
It's U.S. soccer, right? We eat our own. And look, I'm probably guilty of it over the years too. I have no problem with what Landon said. He is paid and brought on television in capacity working with Fox or anybody else to give his opinion, not to give an opinion that everybody agrees with or likes. And plenty of people agreed and plenty of people didn't. I also have no problem with Christian Pulisic's father or anybody in his family I guess, coming to his defense. That's kind of what family does. Now, there is a limit, and obviously, if you think back with the Reynas and what happened, all that kind of stuff, that's a different type of story. My parents never came to my defense when it came to soccer. It was also a very different time back then. So I think it's okay. I think it's healthy, to be quite honest. This back and forth. Christian Pulisic has not said anything, and so that he is using I don't know if he's using his father. I think his father is a man who can, have his opinions, and he is certainly free to express them. But while I can understand, and I have no problem with Christian Pulisic's father or anybody else in his family defending him in his decision not to play this summer, I still think that it was a boneheaded decision. I still think that it was it lacked the ability to read the room. And I still think for the player, in this case, Christian Pulisic, for his agent, and ultimately for this team, indirectly, it was an unnecessary own goal. But I've also kind of moved on from that, and it is what it is. I can't relate, and I don't agree, but I'm not going to lose sleep over it. And if it does ignite Christian Pulisic to come back as an even better version, fine. As a matter of fact, we should demand that he come back in a better version. And I think he has the capacity. He has the capacity to do that. I don't think that Landon or anybody else out there needs to go around, being kumbaya with everybody or apologizing or having a sit down no, that's not how this works. All right. And Christian's a big boy. His father's a man, so they can deal with it. If they want to yell and scream, that's fine. And I have had players, I have had coaches, I have had administrators, I have had fans, I have had girlfriends and boyfriends and fathers and grandfathers come up to me, and oftentimes they just want to get it out. And then oftentimes when it's face to face, it's a very different conversation than over social media. But it's his boy, any way you slice it.
I don't know if you remember, but last summer you got pretty mad at me during the Euros because I brought up the fact that I thought it was weird for former England player turned analyst who had come up small in major tournaments to criticize the current England team for doing so without acknowledging that they themselves had the same issue when they played. And I think I used the example, imagine if Luis Suarez retires, becomes an analyst, and then criticizes somebody for biting an opponent with no self-awareness that he did the same. It was just kind of interesting that and it wasn't just Pulisic's father. Other people went there too, bringing up Landon's sabbatical. So is that something he has to be careful of in criticizing the current players for skipping out?
Well, first, to your first point, if your ability, in your view, Mosse, or anybody else's view, to criticize something is dependent on you having done the same thing, then we're left with, you have to have World Cup winners. Basically, that's it on on the stage. So yeah, I completely think that was wrong, and I let you know in that moment. Now when it comes to Landon, I think it is legitimate and it is fair for people to bring up the fact that he did take a sabbatical. And I've talked about it before that I took a year off. And, for whatever reason, wanting to take time off, that's fine. But you also have to accept and recognize that there are consequences to your decisions. In Landon's case, he didn't go to the World Cup, okay? In my case, I never played for the national team again and was never called up again. And I knew that was an absolute possibility. So that's where I think the distinction is here. And I'm not saying that Christian Pulisic should never play for the national team again. But I do think it's a little bit apples and oranges as to, those two types of situations. And, Landon came back, played with the national team. But ultimately, he didn't get to go to the World Cup. And, Klinsmann has, over the years talked about that decision and stands by that decision. But don't think for a second that Landon's decisions didn't factor in to what Jurgen Klinsmann said. But yeah, this is okay. It's okay for people to have these disagreements. And look, I don't think that Christian Pulisic is naive. And if he does believe this, then he is incredibly naive. But I don't think so. You make a decision like that, you're going to get blowback. You are going to get people disagreeing, whether it's Landon Donovan or just somebody off the street that just can't comprehend how you would do that. And if you don't want to listen to it, that's fine. You can just block it out. If you want to have proxies out there that are going to fight your battles for you, you can certainly do that. But Landon's a big boy. He can handle himself. He can respond with whatever way he wants. And I know he does a podcast, and I'm sure he'll talk about it because he's a smart guy. He recognizes when there is good content to lean into. And, he created it at the time, and he's going to reap the benefits going forward. But yeah, the accusations of him being hypocritical because he took time off, and now Christian Pulisic is taking time off, and now he's criticizing Christian Pulisic for doing it. I think it's fair, and we can have that conversation.
And by the way, the U.S. team might not be getting us all that excited for the World Cup, but covering those UEFA Nations League games, that got me really fired up because those games were amazing. I can't wait for a year from now when those games are occurring here in the United States.
And by the way, we had incredible numbers. So, the ratings were wonderful. And we were reminded time and time again that this is, a tournament that is, just a number of years old and was kind of created to make something more competitive. But it also highlighted the fact, like you said, that these players, they want to play for this team. They will do anything to play for this team. In this case, it was Germany and Spain and France and Portugal in this Final Four. And it meant something to them. There was a trophy at the end of it, which is always important to have that moment. But you're also representing your country, and you're representing your country relative to qualifying for these teams that is about to come, and then obviously next summer in the World Cup. So it was fun to see that. It was fun to see the reaction of the ratings and the amount of people that tuned in. And we were talking last pod, Mosse, about how while we're down on this U.S. team right now, I'm certainly not down on the World Cup. It's going to be a big party, all right? I just want the U.S. to be a part of it and a positive part of it because that makes it that much bigger. But either way, it's going to be a big party. We're going to bring it to you every single day when it comes to a Fox broadcast perspective. But, I want the U.S. to show up at the party too.
Yeah, if you've ever gone to any party, there are people right in the middle of it that are, the life of the party, and then there are people that are kind of in the background standing off to the side. You want the U.S. to be the life of the party, not one of the people standing off to the side.
Can I just, real quick before we move on, because you had mentioned the broadcast the other day of Nations League, it's a little peek behind the curtain. So when we are doing, in this case, an American broadcast of a game that is going on over in Europe. And there's, like I said, incredible interest. And the numbers show that there was incredible interest. We have to do, a balance of the content that we provide. And we have this great opportunity to promote other things that we are doing, whether it's the Gold Cup coming up, and then obviously long-term in terms of the World Cup next summer. And yes, we are going to use different moments in it to promote, the U.S. team, because for the American viewer, as we know, they have affiliations around the world, but they also have, interest in maybe a national team around the world, but also the American team. And I think Landon was oftentimes trying to put some context to what we were seeing. And yeah, like you said, juxtaposing it with the questioning that we have with this team. And I know that there were people at home that were probably watching and saying, why are these guys talking about the U.S. men's national team during a game between Portugal and Spain? Well, we're doing it because of what's coming next summer and what we're talking about in the team. And I do think that it relates. And we obviously moved back and forth, and we gave Spain and we gave Portugal certainly their due in that moment that they were shining. But we are going to use the platform that we have and the opportunity that we have to give a big picture type of view on a consistent basis. And I think it was appropriate to do that then, and we will continue to do it. And some people agree and some people don't, but that's just how we do things.
Now, Matt Turner was clearly at fault in the third Switzerland goal tonight, spilling that rebound that Breel Bolo put in, underlining the fact that he needs to play at club level because he is not sharp right now. And Turner in the news today, it looks like he is headed to Lyon for 8 million euros from Nottingham Forest. He might have found a decent solution here. Lyon are owned by an American, John Textor, who also owns Brazilian club Botafogo, so I'm actually pretty familiar with him. And their starting goalkeeper last season was a Brazilian named Lucas Perry, who did very well and thus is being linked to some bigger clubs and looks like he's on his way out. So reading some of the articles in the French media, the way this is being framed is that Turner's going there to start. Lyon are having massive financial issues right now. So for them to spend 8 million euros on a goalkeeper, it would have to be to start. They're not the type of club that would spend that money for him just to be a backup. Now, I still think, I can see the skepticism in your face. I still think a year out from a World Cup, just come back to MLS. That would have been the safe move, or he would have definitely played anywhere he goes in Europe. There's still a little bit of that, hey, I've heard this before, and let's see what actually happens.
So why are you giving him the benefit of the doubt now? I don't understand.
Just because from a depth chart standpoint, on paper, this is the best situation he's had in a couple of years. Okay. But we'll see how it pans out. I'm curious as well. I'm not 100% convinced.
Yeah, I mean, it's Matt Turner has to prove to us that he has the capability of going into a situation, even with the head start that you're talking about. Like I said, like you said, they spend that money. They obviously, have a connection to him, and they want him. You want to go where you're wanted, but you still got to get on that field, and you still have to show that you're going to save the ball. And if you're not going to do it, there's always somebody else that's biting at your heels that will take your position. So Matt Turner, given what's happened over the last couple of years, I think he has to go back and prove to us that he can go in and either take or maintain the number one position. And to your point, Mosse, whether it's in MLS or any place else, he just needs to be playing. And am I saying if he had been starting all year, does he do better with that? No. But the problem is you're under the spotlight now when you're not starting. And so any little mistake that you make is going to not just be magnified, but is going to be attributed to the fact that you're not playing. We see this all the time.
One move I really like, it looks like Yunus Musa is headed to Napoli. Antonio Conte is evidently a fan. That is falling upward. Napoli have won Serie A 2 of the past 3 seasons. They're a better team than AC Milan. They're in the Champions League next season. So if that deal goes through, to me, that's a terrific landing spot for him.
And, if Conte believes in him and, agreed to this and gave his blessing to this, then he must see the quality that, let's be honest, over the last couple of years has not produced and has not advanced in the way that we wanted. So yeah, if this ends up being true, then great news.
And then some World Cup qualifying news today. Australia beat Saudi Arabia 2-1. Australia off to the World Cup. They're the 11th team to punch their ticket. Saudi Arabia, remember, is one of the U.S.'s group stage opponents at the Gold Cup.
Yeah, I mean, Australia's there often, and sometimes they punch above their weight, and sometimes they they don't. But yeah, what do you said? 11, right? That's number 11.
And I think we're going to get two more here. Ecuador look like they're on their way to qualifying, and then Brazil is up 1-0 on Paraguay in the 83rd minute. One of those teams will qualify. Brazil will do so with a win if they can hold on here. Paraguay would qualify with a win or draw. And then Ecuador getting the result they need. So I think by the end of tonight, it's going to be 13 teams with two more from CONMEBOL joining Argentina, who have already qualified.
And and Venezuela lost to Uruguay?
Yeah, Venezuela lost to Uruguay. The surprising result, Colombia went into Argentina and got a 1-1 draw. They had been in terrible form lately, but that's a terrific result. Luis Diaz scored an amazing goal in that game. And then Almada, our old friend Thiago Almada, equalized for Argentina. Also, some other interesting international results. Did you see England lost to Senegal?
Yeah.
Their first ever defeat to African opposition. So they're kind of sort of having, it's early there, but some of the same conversations the U.S. fans are having about, oh, I thought Gareth Southgate was a problem, and bringing in this flashy foreigner like Thomas Tuchel. They haven't played all that well under Tuchel so far.
Yeah. And I saw some people saying, that, while I am fond of saying we eat our own, and it's much more in a general soccer sense, we know that traditionally the English media, whether it's former players or just general sports media they don't suffer fools, and they don't wait around long, and they will crush you at the mere scent of weakness and vulnerability. And I think they smell that smell right now, and so they're going to come with all sorts of daggers right now. And I think if truth be told, absolutely justified given the lackluster performance in this window from England. But I think they're going to be all right.
And then in terms of the U.S.'s two main CONCACAF rivals, Canada right now 0-0 late in the second half against Ivory Coast, while Mexico are leading Turkey 1-0 in the second half on a goal by Orbelin Pineda. We know the U.S. lost to Turkey 2-1 a few days ago. So that brings us back full circle. Alexi Lalas, the U.S. team, 2 defeats in 2 games in this window, an embarrassing 4-0 loss to Switzerland tonight. The Gold Cup begins in a few days. The U.S. in a group with Trinidad and Tobago, Haiti, and Saudi Arabia. We're a year out from the World Cup. Overall thoughts to close out this pod?
Well, even though I've gotten my cynicism and I've gotten my pessimism and some of that angst out, as I said earlier, it could be a whole lot more. But this team has created a situation where I can't muster that. Having said that, I'm very, very excited about the next year and the things that are going to happen to lead what I believe is going to be a monumental type of summer. And, I've talked about it before in what happened in 1994. And it was such a completely different time. I know a lot of people that watch us, a lot of people that listen to us weren't even born back then. But it was a seminal moment, as was 1999 in the Women's World Cup. And as I've said, we have the opportunity to do that again. And shame on us if we waste it. And when I say waste it, whether we waste it on the field in terms of our performance, and what we're seeing right now, is not giving us a lot of confidence that something magical can happen next summer, or if it's off the field in terms of the organization, it is going to be on us. And when I say that World Cups, home World Cups, I'm talking about because they are unique. When I say that they are legacy builders, they are also historic moments, and those history books will be written, and they can go in a positive direction, and they can go in a negative direction. And if it ends up being on our watch that we crapped the bed, either on the field because our team was bad and it was embarrassing to have a home World Cup and not have a team that made us proud, or off the field in which we don't give people the experience that they deserve and the positive message to take home if they're going someplace else, or back home if they're just coming from United States and opening their eyes. Again, that's on us. But I have an ultimate belief in America and in Americans to rise to the occasion. And I have an ultimate belief that this team, as down as they are right now, can and must find a way to rise to the occasion. And I hope that Mauricio Pochettino is not sleeping tonight. I hope that his staff is not sleeping tonight. I hope that not just the players that are there right now in camp, but the players that are home aren't sleeping tonight. I hope that it's not fear, but I hope that they feel the pressure, because I think they can live up to that pressure, and I think they can harness it for good. But it's going to take a whole lot of work. And so far, you're testing us. And there's only so much that we can, take, and there's so much that we can give. But onward and hopefully upward going forward when it comes to the Gold Cup, and then obviously around the corner for just a handful of games before the World Cup is happening. And like I said, we're barreling down the tracks. It's going to come before we know it. And we've had plenty of time to prepare. And so if it doesn't go right, it's on us. But I think it's going to go in a positive direction. Just might take a little twist and turn along the way. Mosse, anything before we go?
Well, I just want to say Fox is doing a lot of stuff this week to commemorate a year out from the World Cup. You and I taped a special pod with Rob Stone. We talked a lot about the U.S. team, but about other countries as well. Rob posted about it on Instagram today, and that pod should drop sometime in the next couple days. And then you and I are now headed to Miami because we're going to work on this special, in conjunction with FIFA, the special 1 Year to Go show. We're excited about that. There are going to be all these celebrities and FIFA legends on hand. And that's Friday. And then the next day, Saturday the 14th, is when the Gold Cup gets underway. Mexico against the Dominican Republic at SoFi. As you know, Lex, it's been a quiet week here in Los Angeles. So
yes.
Maybe
well, hopefully you and everybody are staying safe. Like you said, I'll meet you down in Miami Beach. We're gonna have a good time down there with this primetime show, 8:00 on Friday night on Fox, celebrating 1 year to go. And I really, really enjoyed having Rob Stone on the other day, and that'll show up in your feed. Rob Stone, obviously, from a host perspective, there's no one better. But I'm telling you right now, and I've known Rob for a long time, getting him to sit down and give his opinions on sport, if you get the opportunity to do that, and we luckily have been able to do that every once in a while when it comes to the State of the Union, he brings it. He could be a great pundit. He's already a great host, but he could certainly be a great pundit if he wanted to. But usually he's, refereeing and making sure that everything goes all right on the set, which he does in an incredible way. All right, keep reviewing, keep downloading, keep rating, keep doing all the different things that you do out there when it comes to the State of the Union. Keep pounding left and right, up and down over there on the old YouTube machine, and smash that button and all the different things, and Instagram and X and Spotify and, all the different things out there. We'll talk to you again later on this week, like I said. And until then, and as always, keep the faith and size the day.